We get Farnoosh here. Farnoosh, I'm very, very excited to have you here. Thank you so much for doing this interview with me. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your story, how you basically went from the corporate world to a thriving entrepreneur. So tell us a little bit about yourself, about who you are, and what you do.
Okay, well, thank you so much for talking to me today, Dan. I'm really excited to talk to you, and I'm happy to tell you about my story. So, I was in the corporate world for up to 11 and a half years, which is a long time. And I was very dedicated. I was very successful. I did a number of things from engineering to project management, process improvement, executive communications. I did a lot of different things. I traveled a lot. And I wanted to really find the one thing that was fulfilling, right? That made me happy. And I found it in sparks here and there, but it didn't last. And then I fell into blogging about 2 years before I resigned from my job. And that was the turning point, right? I found something that was extremely compatible with my strengths. And I didn't even know this. And it slowly pulled me away from my corporate career progression. And it made me happy for the first time. And so I was in the corporate world, to sum it up, and then I eventually moved away. And a year and a half ago, I actually hired my husband out of the same company to work with me full time in our business. So we have made drastic shifts that I'm happy to go into today with our talk.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That is, that's just. I'm so excited to hear that. I'm so excited to hear your progress and the whole transformation. So, can you tell us a little bit about what you've done, before you became the entrepreneur, before you lived that life? How did your life look like before in the corporate world? What did you do? What was your job? So, because I know there's a lot of people who can watch
Okay.
this interview who can relate to your situation that you've been in, back then.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to go into more detail. So I went to engineering school. I come from a very technical background, thanks to my father's influence, right? And no, I really appreciate that. He had best intentions for me. And sometimes we go into careers that maybe not the best for us, but it gets us started. And so I worked at a very small startup, and then I immediately joined the company that I mentioned earlier, which is actually Cisco Systems, the technology company. And I started out as a customer support engineer, which means when banks and service providers like AT&T and Verizon would have network problems on their voice over IP network, I would fix it. They would call me and yell at me. It was a very stressful job. And so my life, the way I was, doing my work, I would go into the office. I had specific hours that I was on shift, and then we would hand over our shift to the next time zone, which was in Europe and then Asia. So it was a very global work, and a lot of coordination, a lot of customer support work, and it was extremely stressful. I worked extremely hard, and I was very good at it, but I didn't love it. And that didn't matter at the time, right? I was in my 20s. It did not matter that I didn't love it, because I had told myself I want to be a success in my corporate job. And success meant I make a lot of money, I have prestige, I have a fancy title, I have a lot of responsibility, and I got all of that. I even got this very fancy, difficult certification called the Cisco Certified Inner Networking Expert, which is huge, right? I mean, I could leave Cisco and go and double my salary, but I was very loyal to my company, so I stayed there and I grew slowly inside that company. And when I realized 5 years into my customer support role that is not really my strength, that is not an area that I really enjoy, I slowly moved away from the technical world, very slowly. I went into technical writing, I went into project management and process improvement. And again, every day I would still go into my office. We had cubicles. Cisco is a global company, so we would work with people from all over the world, which I loved, because I love getting to know people and making friends in other countries. And I learned a lot, right? I traveled a lot. I learned a lot. Grew different skill sets, and I had a lot of success. But there was something that just felt not right. And this happened gradually over the years. I would have never imagined leaving my corporate job in the first 8 years. I was unhappy, but I never thought leaving is an option for me. I thought another part of the company is an option, or maybe a different company would be an option, but never leaving this job, which may be interesting to your listeners because we don't even know all of our options sometimes. And this was a while ago, so there wasn't this availability of so much information online that we have now. And so eventually I started to go into sales operations and project management and work with different organizations and also take care of my other hobbies. I call them hobbies, such as writing and traveling with my husband. And I started to learn a lot more about myself. And when I fell into blogging and writing, something very interesting happened. I actually started to attract readers. So I was just doing this for fun. I never thought my little personal blog would amount to much. And it was so drastically different from what I did at my corporate job that I never thought it would be anything such as a career, such as a business. So this is another tip for you because you may be doing something like this already based on your passions and your talents and your yearnings, but you're not really paying much attention to it because it's a little hobby over here and this is my serious job over here. So I started to see a connection between maybe the hobby, maybe it can turn into income, maybe it can turn into a passion. And we'll get into more details, I'm sure. But that was the progression. Blogging was really the turning point for me to move me away from corporate. So I hope that gives you enough ideas on what I did before.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I was also, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is what was kind of the turning point in your career when kind of that big shift where you moved into entrepreneurship. From what I'm hearing is it was a very gradual thing. It didn't happen overnight. It's not overnight. You didn't figure out I got to quit my job and I got to start my own business. It was something that happened step by step over even a period of years, right?
Yes.
And you learned more about yourself as you followed. You did more of your hobbies. You invested more time in your hobbies, and you started blogging because of your passion for writing. And you realized, there's people out there that realize or that see that's something interesting writing. Just realize that we sort of started our businesses or our passion business in the same way, like starting with blogging and realizing that there's a potential out there. So what was the thing that made you decide to change? Why, or what was the point where you knew you had to change something?
That's a great question. And everything you said is true. It was a progression. It was a little slower than I would have liked when I look back. So hopefully, if you're listening, you get inspired to take a little bit faster action. But the turning point for me was actually a conference in Las Vegas in 2010 called Blog World. They are now called the New Media Expo. They're a big conference now. But that was early days of Blog World. And I went to this conference to meet some of my blogger friends in person and just to learn a little more about blogging. And something really interesting happened when I was sitting there listening to the stories of people like Darren Rouse and Brian Clark and a few others who were on stage. And the way they talked about when they took their hobby seriously and they started looking at the hobby as a business. And that was the shift in my mind. And sometimes that's all you need, a shift where you start taking your hobby, your passion seriously. And you and invest time in it. So when I came home from Blog World in October of 2010, I started to hustle like crazy. I took my blog seriously, and I don't mean I was serious. I just meant it wasn't just a little hobby over here. I started to invest time in it. I started to build content that was useful. I started my first newsletter. I wrote my first ebook, and I started to plant seeds of this crazy dream that maybe my blog will amount to something. But again, I had no intentions of leaving my job at this point. But that was a shift in my thinking, which was huge. Because At the same time, I started to minimize my day job responsibilities. And by that I mean I stopped pursuing a career in my corporate job. Okay? So you know the difference between doing a good job at work versus pursuing a career and building a career. They are two different things. You could do a good job. You could still be honest to your own work ethics. You can still get good performance reviews and have a stable job, but you don't let the job consume you as though it was your whole life and your whole career. And that freed up a lot of time. And it took away the pressure of I have to be a success at corporate because I stopped caring about that. That was not the dream anymore. It was just this illusion I had followed for years. This little blog was everything. And the second event was much later in March of 2011. I was put on a project by my company that I just didn't want to do, that just didn't speak to my core values. And I went to my management and asked to be taken off the project. And they said no. And that was the immediate final turning point where I said, I'm out of here. Like, I don't have to do this. And so my husband and I had some arrangements and made a deal that I'm going to quit my job and do this blogging and take a risk and see where it goes.
Okay. So from what I'm hearing is that one of the turning points was actually going to this event. So looking at your passion for writing, looking at blogging and saying, well, there may be something in there that could actually be a business. Let's look at it, meet some people who are actually doing this as a business. Maybe there's some people I'm going to meet. This is really interesting because it's kind of role modeling, really. When you say, I love blogging and I want to have a business. So how can I find people who are doing that and can I meet them? Then going there and getting inspired by them, kind of surrounding yourself with them and closing the gap between where you are and where you want to be in your head and closing that gap and kind of making it happen in your head. I think that's a huge lesson from there. Thank you so much for sharing that. So what happened next? What happened when you got that project, your boss said no, and you said that's it? What happened next? When you quit your job?
Right. So I quit my job and I was really proud of myself. And so you're excited for about a week and then you come back down to earth and you're like, now what? And I had actually started building my first product in January of that year. So I was building my first product. I was very excited. And I quit my job in April or May, early May. And I launched my product around the same time. And my product completely bombed. It was a total nothing. It just wasn't a success. And that was really hard for me because I thought I'm just going to do everything I heard about and that's it. I'll have a booming business. So that was a very humbling lesson. I had to really, really think about a bigger strategy and a long-term vision for my business. And for me, I'm very impatient. I'm a very type A person. So I want everything right now, which is very, very challenging for those of us who are very driven, very ambitious, and very successful. We have to understand building a business, especially an online business, takes time. And if you are just looking at random people who have had this overnight success, and there is no such thing, but if it seems that way to you, they have even taken their time, and sometimes maybe things have worked out well for them. Those are very, very exceptional cases. So if you are serious, and I was, and if I knew there is no turning back, there is no way today or in 2011, after I quit my job at Cisco, I would go work for any company, including my dream companies, Google, Apple, you name it. I am not going. So I knew this is the only path to survival and happiness and success for me. So that much was clear. And then the next level of clarity was, what do I do? So I had to really get over this first product not working. And that's a big lesson. And in fact, Eben Pagan, he's one of my heroes. He talks about this. He talks about having this healthy disconnect from your products and services, because some of them do fine, some of them do really well, and some of them do poorly. And if you are attached to them like they're your baby, then that's very hard to recover from. Because you're an entrepreneur and you are going to have more products and more services and more brilliant business ideas. So I started creating more, Dan. I just started doing more and more. I did a book. I actually had a speech coming up at New Media Expo. I spoke there in May. So a few weeks later, I was up there. That was really good. And then I wrote a book, my first book, 8 Pillars of Motivation. And I put that up on the Amazon Kindle store. So I started to go into the self-publishing world. Then I created a video product later that summer. And to me, the foundation of my business, I didn't want to build it on promoting other people's products or advertising. I wanted to have my own products and services. And you have to find out what that is for you. So for me, it was very important to create very good products and services and find the ones that really work and help people. And so the second product did extremely well. And then I started creating my first course. And my coaching, I had a coaching program that was taking off more and more. So things started to pick up. And we started creating the foundation of a business that was profitable in a few months. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think you've mentioned tons of interesting things in there, tons of great stuff. And one of the things is that, expect failure because, I went through the same thing. I think every entrepreneur goes through that if they're not extremely lucky. And there actually is no such thing as an overnight success. Many times, if people call it an overnight success, it took 10 or 15 years to get to an overnight success. Right?
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of expecting failure. I think is a really powerful thing because many times as an entrepreneur, you invent, you create something, and you test, and you try, and you explore, and much of the stuff fails. And I'm just reading Richard Branson's biography right now, and his biography, like 90% of his biography is about his failures.
Right.
Because that guy failed so many times, and because of these failures, success was inevitable. So that was really interesting to see in there as well, and that's something you talked about as well there. So, the first thing you talked about was your corporate career and corporate life, basically, what you've done there, how you felt, and how does your life right now, today, look like compared to when you were in the corporate world?
So my life right now is, in short, a lot happier. I live in the same house. My husband and I work together, so that was a huge shift, right? We are couple entrepreneurs, and we were just corporate junkies. So this was a huge transition for both of us, and it has been wonderful. It has had ups and downs, but now it's a really good thing for our relationship, and it is extremely liberating. So when we were in our corporate jobs, we made a lot more money. We're still catching up as far as our business to the 2 six-figure salaries we brought in. But I can tell you that neither of us missed that. And we are so confident that this is the path to our true potential. The thing we were meant to do, for ourselves and for others, that we are living on purpose. Right? When I was in the corporate world, so all of these changes, I'm telling you, Dan, are internal, right? I'll tell you a little bit about lifestyle changes, but the internal changes, how you feel about your work is really a direct result of what you produce, what you put out to the world, how you help people, and how much money you make and how much profit you bring in. Because if you are doing what strengthens you rather than weakens you and depletes you, then you are on the right track on your life. And you will be the role model for many other people. And the money comes later. That's the hardest lesson to understand, I think. The money is the side benefit of the bigger picture. The bigger picture is doing something that helps other people, that serves a purpose, that gets you out of bed in the morning. These are not just cliches that you hear, they are true. So I think on the inside, we are both more fulfilled and we are working harder than ever to figure this out because we don't have a roadmap. In the corporate world, we knew we go to work, we do what the boss says. Maybe we had a little bit of freedom, and I had grown more in my job. So I had some leadership and responsibilities that way. But eventually, you really are responsible to your boss. So that freedom of anything you want to do, right? Like right now, I have 2 books that I published. And I never thought I would do something like this, see? And then we are talking about writing a 3rd book. Now, I could decide to write more books, or I could say I'm not writing any more books. I'm going to focus on coaching. Or I'm not going to coach anymore. I'm going to go become a professional speaker. I mean, you have that freedom. And to me, that's incredible. You can take your business in any direction because now the technology is there. The world is smaller. You have access to people. And it's just so much easier to build a business and support yourself than it was 10 or 15 years ago. So as far as lifestyle changes, we travel a lot more. So we were in Europe for 5 weeks, working and playing. We are going to Asia and back to Europe, and we can do that because we are taking our work with us. We are on our own schedules, and I think it's wonderful because travel is very important to us. If that's important to you, then you can build a business that goes with you. If that's not important to you, fine. Maybe you want to go play sports in the morning and only work in the afternoons, right? Like you build your dream lifestyle around your work because everything is related. So those are some of the differences.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is huge, you know. Yeah. When I look back, when I was like 19, 20, I started reading about, you know, the lifestyle entrepreneur. And I was like, that was always my dream. Mm-hmm. And then maybe about a few months ago, I kind of did this exercise where I kind of go through, you know, what you achieved and over the past, you know, few years and where you're at right now, and you know, be grateful for what you have. And I looked at that list, and I thought back to my 20th birthday or something like that, and I just realized I'm living my dream.
Yeah.
You know. If I wanna go to travel somewhere, I go travel. Like last year, I was traveling 10 weeks in South America, working 2 days a week, while you know keeping the level of business as it is. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is amazing because that's just not something you can do. You know, traveling. I mean, we're on the same page. You know, we both love traveling. Mm-hmm. I mean, freedom. That's also, you know, we're on the same page. Freedom is our utmost, one of the highest values. Mm-hmm. And it's just it's such a different experience if you get to decide what your calendar looked like, because in the corporate world my calendar was set up by my boss. Yeah. From 8 to 5. Right. It was set up from 8 to 5 by my boss, and then I had to do work after that.
Right, because the meetings take up so much time.
Exactly. So I think this is a huge thing, the lifestyle. Lots and lots of my clients, that's also something that they come up with when they say, well, you know, I want to build my business because of the lifestyle. You know, I don't want to be a slave of my business, because many people who start their own business, they make the mistake, you know, for example, somebody's in IT, mm-hmm. They are a consultant as an employee. They start their own business, they become a consultant again in IT, but now they work 12 hours instead of 10 hours in their corporate job. They have to pay all the, you know, everything by themselves, social security and everything by themselves, and you know, they make themselves a slave of their business. But you know, we want to make it the other way around. We want to make sure that the business serves our lifestyle.
Right. And I want to make a point on that, because I'm so glad you mentioned that. That was the trend that I would see if anybody ever dared leave their stable job at Cisco, and I say stable because they've had a number of layoffs lately. But if you left, you would basically go and become a consultant in the same thing that you did at Cisco for a number of other companies and take on a whole other set of responsibilities such as your healthcare, your stuff like that. However, there is nothing wrong with that, but the reason people would do that is because they don't know any other way. They don't know the whole picture about how to identify their other strengths, whether they have passions, of course they have passions, and how to pursue it. So I think having more awareness and understanding your choices, your options, because I was in the same boat. So I totally get it. I didn't know what on earth I would do, even though I knew I am in the wrong place. And that's very difficult to do. And that's something I work with my clients and my students to do. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
This is, you just mentioned something very, very important. The not knowing what to do. So, because my question, the next question I want to ask you is, you said it took you quite a while to make the transition happen. You stayed in corporate for a long time or for a while, even after you knew it's not the right thing. What do you think was holding you back from making the transition, or basically making the decision? What was holding you back?
Yeah, the same thing that holds all of us back, right? This illusion, which is called fear, right? The fear of what am I going to do? Am I going to fail? Am I going to make it? Am I going to be happy? Am I going to have financial peace? And it's the discomfort. It's stepping out of the familiar into the unknown. But I have learned so much about how much you need to do that. I was listening to a Jim Carrey commencement speech yesterday, and I'll send it to you. And he said something so beautiful 10 minutes in. The first 10 minutes where he was just goofing around. But 10 minutes in, he said something very profound. And he said how his father had a stable job and then he got fired. And Jim learned that you can fail at something you hate in life. So why not do something you love, right?
That is powerful.
It is very powerful. And failing doesn't mean failing like being on the ground and crying. If you are miserable, if you wake up miserable, you have failed. You are not successful. So all the success in your company, if it doesn't let you sleep at night and you don't wake up happy with your life because life is so good, you have failed. So that is the measure of failure and success for me. It's very clear, very simple. And when that becomes clear, then you start looking for your passion, because really failure is part of the process. But I think what holds us back is the fear of it. Because failure itself, it comes, you get over it, you fail at your job, you fail at your relationships. I mean, failure at your dream is just part of the process. But it's the fear of it. Oh my God, what if? And you never do anything because you fear something that may not even happen. And that's a shame. And And I think a lot of people confuse fear with defeat. Because, sorry, not fear. Failure with defeat. Oh, because if you fail, it doesn't mean you lost. It doesn't mean you lost. It just means that you got to try something else. That's it. If you associate failure with having to try another way, then you're never gonna give up. But most people most people give failure the meaning of the end. Yes.
And that is, it's also something that I had to learn to overcome. So that's my next question. How did you, you said fear. I would argue that's what all of us holds back from not making any kind of changes. It doesn't matter what it is, any kind of change in life, in business, in career. Mm-hmm. So how were you able to overcome the fear? What did you do?
Yeah. So for me, the first fear was leaving my job, right? Even though I hated it, I was so afraid. And I think one thing that needs to happen is you need, and this is not a good thing, I hope you avoid this, you need to be in enough pain to make a change. So I was in not physical pain, although it was somewhat emotional and physical, but in enough misery and pain so that you are driven to do something different. People do this in their relationships all the time. Things that start going wrong, they ignore it. They do nothing. And then it comes to a point where there is so much pain and suffering, and then they get divorced or they separate. But if you, so to the point of suffering, if it becomes greater than the fear of failure, then you take action. But I don't think that's the healthiest way to go about it. I think understanding fear and understanding the risk and the rewards that you could be experiencing, right? Because you will stay in your comfort zone forever if you don't want what's on the other side of that. And everything that you want, all of your dreams, all of your fulfillment is really on the other side of fear. So I think you just have to be very clear with yourself that if you are unhappy, it is going to take this acceptance that there is going to be discomfort along the way, and there is going to be rewards at the end. And if you don't want to have any of that, then that's fine. But you have to realize you will also not have the fulfillment. You will also end up envying other people and possibly regret things at the end of your life. And so you just have to be clear with yourself. Some people never take that leap. Never. They go through their whole lives and that's fine. Some people just give up. They just that's not for them. But if you are looking at your life and there is two paths, you could go the comfortable path or you could go what Brendan Burchard calls the charged life, right? And if you choose the comfortable path, you will be happy, but the fulfillment, the real excitement is when you live a charged life. And that life is aligned to your passions. And by the way, it took me years to understand this and to live it on a day-to-day basis. So at the time, the way I was dealing with my failures, which is your question, I really was just making sure that this needs to be a success. So I'm doing whatever it takes. So I knew I can't go back to my job. I knew I need to make this a massive success. I didn't just want to build a little bitty business and just bring in income to pay the bills. I'm not interested in that. I'm building a little empire, right? I want to make a huge difference. So I think I just had to really swallow all the fear, all the shame that I would feel, which is very cultural, right? My culture associates any kind of failure with shame and guilt. I'm from Iran. And so I just had to push forward. I had a lot of support from my husband, so that really helped. You need to have a support system, somebody that understands what you're doing. That may not be your family or friends, but you need to find somebody, and there is so much support out there right now. The communities, the mastermind groups, you can hire a coach, you can get a mentor, but you need to have a support system because it's going to be tough. And at first, you need to have that structure to get yourself in the right mindset. Yeah. So I made sure those are in place.
Yeah, I think you mentioned quite a few very powerful tools, and one of them is pain and pleasure, basically, because a lot of people don't make a change because things are okay. One of my clients called this the golden corporate cage.
Yes.
You get so much money for the pain that it's okay. When you ask people, there's a very, very simple test I use to ask people or to figure out if people actually love what they do or are passionate about what they do. I always ask them, do you love your job? And the interesting thing is people always say, when they not hate their jobs, they always say, yeah, of course, I like my job. And then I say, well, do you love your job? And then they say, well, yes, I just said I like my job. The thing is, if you don't love it, you cannot physically express the feeling. And if you can, I think that's one of the toughest situations to be in, because if you're in a spot where you're with the back against the wall, you have to change. There's no other way. You have to change. So you make the change. You always make the change.
Yes.
But if you're somewhere in the middle, in the okay, or in the average, or in the mediocre, that's the toughest spot to be in. Because what you need to do then is you need to mentally get with the back against the wall. So you need to
Yes.
associate massive pain with not changing. What are all the bad things that are going to happen if you don't change, and what are all the good things that are going to happen if you do change? And I mean, that's one of the most impactful exercise that I always do with my clients, and that I do for myself whenever I want to make a change happen. Because many times we're in a situation where we want to make a change happen, but it's sort of okay. We don't really
Yeah.
have. It's not a must. If it's not a must, we don't change. We need to make it a must, even if it's just mentally. Because if we make it a must mentally, we make it a must physically as well. So that's a really good tool that you mentioned there. So if you look back at your career, and if you could talk to somebody who, or if you could basically talk to yourself 5 or 10 years ago, what kind of advice would you give yourself at that time in your career in order to get to where you are today?
Right. I would give myself a sense of urgency, and I would remind myself about the why. So one thing that as you were saying earlier, maybe some people are comfortable. They want to change, but they're comfortable. So there is no pressure. There is no sense of urgency. I think you need to think about why you want to change. And like I said, it's not for everyone. Becoming an entrepreneur is a very hard work. And if my clients say to me, I want to be happy and I want to go to the beach and I want to have a really easy life, I would tell them to go get a job, possibly 2 jobs. But don't start your own business because it's hard work. But if you are the type of person that really needs this fulfillment, you have the itch to create something of your own, you just need to get very clear on why. Why for you? For me, my why was I don't ever want to work for someone else. I have so much creativity that I need to bring to the world. There is no corporate structure that can support this. And I just love the idea of creating my own business because it's the only way to true prosperity. You can make a lot of money at corporate, but to be wealthy without any limits, you do it with having your own business or businesses. So get clear on your why. And that's what I would tell myself if I could talk to myself 5 years ago. But I would also give myself guidance. I mean, I had mentors. I had vice presidents and directors in my corporate organization as my mentors. Very smart, super successful people. Not one of them ever said to me, you know what? You should go start your own business. Nobody. Nobody in my family ever said that to me. Nobody in my friend circle. So I did not have the guidance. So I wish I had the guidance that someone would say, yes, you can start your own business. I know you don't have an MBA degree. I know you went to engineering school. I know you've never, ever run a business, but you can start your own business because all these other people did and they were able to do it, and so can you. So that's the only thing I would say to myself, and I would just open my own eyes to all of my options. And we talked about this earlier. I just didn't know my options. So when I was unhappy with my company, I naturally did what everybody does. Go talk to other companies. Can you give me a better job that could make me happier? Because I can do all these things for you. Well, for me, that was just the wrong path. And I'm glad it didn't work out because I ended up being pushed to the limit where I was, and then I left. And I wasn't half as smart as you because you left a lot earlier. You're still a baby, Dan. But no, the point is I would just open my own eyes. I would give myself trust and confidence, which I didn't have. That's another thing. You can do it. Yes, have confidence, right? I mean, a lot of us we are so overwhelmed by the lack of confidence in ourselves that we put all this confidence in other people. But when it comes to us, we're like, no, I can't do that. That's not for me, right? And being able to have a better inner dialogue with yourself, trusting your own decisions, trusting yourself to be smart and responsible, to see your dreams through, that's a key asset to develop, and it can take you very, very far. It doesn't mean you don't fail. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means you're going to get it done eventually. That's something you really want, and you will make it happen. So I would have a long conversation with myself. Yeah.
But it will probably be a very, very fruitful one. So that's for sure.
That's the hope.
So thank you so much for sharing this. So, I mean, right now you're in a position where you've built your business to to an amazing place where you've been able to provide an income for both of you, and to travel places, and to actually to live a lifestyle entrepreneur's dream. So right now you're in a situation where you help others get out of corporate and live up to their full potential, and build their own business and build a career on their terms. So can you tell us? And I know you've launched a program that's called the Smart Exit Blueprint. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So I was really not fumbling through my way, but basically the way I left my job, I did some things really well, but some things I could have done differently, and some things I could have done a lot better. So after a year of being out and really learning more about business and about mistakes and things to do and not to do, and the mindset shift that you need to have from employee to entrepreneur, I created this program, this system, which basically takes employees who really want to start their own side hustles first. I call it a side hustle, and then grow it into a full-time business. I help them make that very difficult transition, because there is no resource that I could find that helps employees make this change, right? There is a lot of ways that you can go and learn how to do a startup, how to start your own business. And I feel like nobody speaks to the mindset shift and the fears and the frustrations that hold you back when you're in the corporate environment and that's all you have ever known. And how do you even figure out what to do? You know you don't want to do this, but how do you figure out what to do? And how do you figure out how to take that into a business and make it successful? So that's what we talk about, and that's the system that we work on building for you. It's basically a full framework, and it's called Smart Exit Blueprint. And it's a blueprint because it's different for everyone. Your blueprint for exiting your job and going into your business is going to be different than someone else. And all of my students have had different blueprints. They have taken different paths. There's actually a very good mix of people, and they have made their way out of their jobs, or they are on the path to making their ways. Some of them take a longer time. Some of them are ready to move on. And I think it's really important to have a plan, to have a roadmap, to have a system that shows you how to do this so you don't waste your time, which is really your money, essentially, right? You can make a much smarter and more profitable exit by following this system than I did without it. So I'm really excited about the results that we are getting, and I'm glad that you mentioned it.
Yeah, I mean, I went to the program myself, and as you know, and I mean, one of the things that I loved most about it, and I think that's where a lot of people struggle with, because they, to be honest, I yet have to find the person to talk to that says, I would never start my own business. If I had all the resources in the world, I still wouldn't start my own business. I still have to find that person. I haven't talked to that person yet. Mm-hmm. So I believe it's everybody's dream, or almost everybody's dream, to have their own business. Most of the time, people are in a spot where they don't know where to start. They don't have a business idea. They have no idea. And even if they have an idea, there's nothing to measure it against. And that's what I really loved about this program, because in the beginning, it's about doing the self-assessment, looking at yourself, looking at values and passion and strength and experience and calling and things like that. Pretty much, something similar that I would do with my clients as well. So doing that self-assessment and then looking at that, business idea, or the business ideas, what comes up in a brainstorming session, what are some ideas? And that's where some people get to, but then the crucial part happens. Then you take that idea, that thing, and say, is it aligned with my values? Is it aligned with my passion? Is this aligned with why I'm here? Yeah. And that builds so much confidence, because if you have a list of 20 ideas and you nail it down to 3, and then eventually you nail it down to 1, and this idea is aligned with all of those things, and you know this idea can make you money to a full-time income, there's so much confidence behind it because you know you can make it happen. And you also, you know, if you can make it happen, you're going to be fulfilled. You can earn it, you know, a full-time income and beyond with that idea, and that just gives so much confidence and clarity. So that's, you know, that's kind of the key where I was like, you know, if I would have had that in the beginning when I started, I would have cut my learning curve a lot as well.
Me too. Me too, yes. And this is the thing about starting. You don't have to be a hero and figure everything out on your own like I wanted to do, right? You don't get a credit for being a hero. You only spend your time more on figuring stuff out that you could learn like this, and you waste money in the end because your business could grow faster if you ask for help. And for help, you know, this is one program. Sure, you could certainly benefit from it a lot. But the idea is bigger. The idea is investing in yourself and taking yourself seriously and not being a hero and figuring everything out on your own, because it is going to take you much longer. Right? If the goal is to build a profitable business that creates that exit for you out of your job and then gives you that freedom lifestyle, don't you want to get there faster, right? So that's a shift in mindset that you need to think about also. Yeah,
this is so huge, you know, this idea of investing in yourself, because, you know, I believe one of the main reasons why I am where I am today is because of all the investments I made in myself. Yeah. You know, without getting the first courses in making money online at the age of 16, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. Yeah. And then continuously keeping investing in myself and trying and testing and looking for new ways to do things. This is huge. And you know, I usually don't usually promote programs, because many of the programs, you know, I haven't been through, but because I've been through your program and I know how valuable it is. You know, I mean, seriously, every single person who's watching this should get that program if they're still in the corporate world and they're looking to get out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post a link below this video on YouTube, on my blog, so that, you know, people can check it out. Because I mean, it helped me so much to clarify my ideas. Even if I have a new business idea, even if I say, well, you know, I have this new business idea or this business model I want to test, I go through the program and see if it aligns with all of the things that I am. So this is so powerful. Thank you so much for creating this and sharing it with us. And also, thank you so much for this interview. It was a pleasure talking to you. So where can people find you?
Thank you so much for having me, Dan. This is one of my passionate topics, so I was glad to speak about it. And you can find me on my home online, which is prolificliving.com. So that's all the information you need about me. But of course, the information that Dan is giving you, Smart Exit Blueprint, go there, check it out. And I also provide access to myself. So that's one of the key values that people tell me. That's my students' number one takeaway from the program, is that they work directly with me through group coaching calls. So you're not alone in the program, because sometimes you have to go through programs on your own and it's hard to stay motivated. And so just remember that. And you can find me at prolificliving.com. Social media, Prolific Living, that's me. I have claimed it just about everywhere. So yes, get in touch. Let me know where you heard about heard about me on Dan's show. And it was just such a pleasure to talk to you, Dan. And I know you're going amazing places. So it's wonderful to be connected to you. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you, Farnoosh, for being here, and I hope to speak to you soon. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.